The trio of Bucky, Howard, and Peggy would begin to make their way through Olympus Heights, a rather luxurious area of Rapture where some of the rich and the elite and the influential resided, a separation between the extraordinary and the commoner. Although now apartment buildings were left to be nothing more but barren wastelands of what once were. Tenants either killed, turned to splicers, or suffering a much more gruesome fate. Safe to say, Fontaine had now gained control of Rapture. The pheromone used to control the splicers, now in effect, he was using them strategically. They were so few and far between. The main purpose was to guard and keep as far distance between himself and any of his adversaries. Of course, as the trio made their way through Rapture, they couldn't help but spark some form of conversation as they walked through dark and damp corridors, with Bucky now only recently regaining his faculties and his lost arm. Even while trying to stay focused on the mission, there were still so many things he wanted to know, so many things that he didn't know. From their calculations, he had been under for almost 16 years, only being awoken sporadically to carry out various forms of mission and espionage. The memories hadn't left him. He could still remember what he did, even if he wasn't in control of his body at the time. Howard remarked that it was a good thing they got him back on their side. Otherwise, who knows what he could have done, given that both he and Peggy were probably high on Hydra's hit list. They might have even sent Bucky to try to take one of their lives. If only he knew. But Bucky, his main priority was wondering what happened to him. What happened to Steve? Why wasn't he here? There's no way he would have allowed Peggy and Howard to do something so reckless, at least not on their own. But there was no point in asking a question you already knew the answer to. Vaguely enough, Steve had gone down under. From what they had spoken of, somewhere in the Arctic, although they were unable to confirm his location, and they had been trying to find him for years now. There was just no telling where he could be. The ocean was a vast place. Chances are currents or whatnot probably swept him from wherever he used to be. There was no telling where he could be now, and even if they found him, what sort of state he'd be in. Probably frozen or decaying under the pressure of the waters down below. As they continued to move through Olympus Heights, there were hordes of splicers, all of them set to attack on the three, while Fontaine's voice could be heard on high through the speakers. So, the rats didn't want to go down with the ship. Pesky little cockroaches, the likes of you. But I don't blame you. Still, you gotta understand, this is all a part of nature. The big, dominant force will always conquer over the jungle. Or in this case, the king of the sea will always make the weak subjugate to it. Just give up. You guys are on your last legs. You're never gonna make it to where I am anyway. And even if you did, I got more than enough power to take you out. Begrudgingly enough, I got respect for the lot of you, for what you've been able to do, for what you've been able to accomplish. You don't have to struggle anymore, Peggy. You can rejoin your favorite boy in the afterlife. You guys can get to finish that dance. Howard? Oh, no need to worry about you. I'll make sure that Stark Industries continue to flourish. And I've seen and heard about that Mrs. Stark. Oh, she and I are gonna have a hell of a time. I'll make sure to give you a proper heir. a worthy son to the throne. And then there's Bucky. Bucky, the lab rat. The guy that doesn't know what to believe. You can't trust your own memories or your own mind. Say, have you really given in to what that Tenenbaum bitch has been telling you? How do you know she's not playing you for a fool? Sending you on a suicide mission. The lot of you. You all think that when you try and get to me, that everything's gonna work out the way that you want. But how do you know she hasn't flown the coop? You think she cares about you? She cares about those girls? No. She's a weakling that can't live with what she's done. She's scum. Trash. She'll betray you the first chance she gets. And what's the alternative? Howard barked. That we listen to you? Roll over and die? Preferably. I mean, I at least try to make it quick and painless. Can't say the same for you. Living with those bolts and wires protruding out of your chest. How does it feel? Nah, I'm doing what's best for everyone. What's best for yourself? Oh, no, don't be like that, sweet. I thought you and I had something special. I know. How about I put on that old jig you like? I know that this type of voice is what's got your heart pumping. Or should I be something else? How about this, Peggy? Does this suit you better? A splicer came running towards them, and in anger, Peggy shot it in the head. Before pumping more bullets into its body, Howard warning her not to waste all her ammo. That last voice. He tried to emulate Steve. Now she'd had enough. Hear me, you bastard! You can do whatever you want, but don't you dare ever use that voice again! You aren't worthy of it. No matter how hard you try, no matter how hard you pretend, you will never even be an ounce of the man that he was. Fontaine, you are nothing but a coward and a liar. You pillage and steal because you were never strong enough to build for yourself. I may not agree with Ryan, but I can agree with one thing. This world would be better off without the likes of you. So that's how you feel, Toots. Well, don't worry. I'll make sure that you don't have to worry about me ever again. Because I'll just make a world where you all don't exist. Sweet dreams. The security bots would now come flying to their location. Bucky and Howard grabbing respective Eve, taking as much of it as they could. For Howard, he needed the Eve to help power the electrobolt that was moving through his body, functioning and powering the tiny magnet in his chest, keeping the shrapnel from reaching his heart. As for Bucky, he used the Eve to power up the various plasmids that were in his body. Thankfully, Tenenbaum used the same formula that they tried with Jack, so that even when he used Adam and Eve, his body wouldn't go into a state of shock. He wouldn't become addicted, and he was able to manage the plasmids in his system. Thankfully, the skills of a soldier never diminish, and now he was able to use his power at full capacity, having 2 organic arms instead of 1. Telekinesis was able to throw back various forms of bombs and grenades right back at various enemies, while using Incinerate and Electrobolt and even Frostbite respectively. Of course, taking out the splicers, that wasn't too much of an issue. But there were various forms of the Big Daddies all roaming around. And with the Master Key, Fontaine also had the control plasmid for the Big Daddies, setting their sights upon the trio. This came ahead when in one area, as they left from Olympus Heights to Apollo Square, that would lead them in a shortcut directly to the medical pavilion. They came face to face with two such big daddies. They were known as Rumblers. They only had one arm, with the other one being turned into a cannon that could shoot out proximity mines, grenades, and other rockets, heat seekers. Safe to say they had the firepower, and with their sights set on their new targets, they lumbered around shooting, attempting to blow them to bits. Bucky would give cover using the telekinesis plasmid to catch the grenades and the rocket launchers in midair and shoot them back at the enemy. Peggy, using a specially modified pistol given by Dr. Tenenbaum, enhanced with armor-piercing rounds to be able to deal out some massive damage. Howard was taking shots with a shotgun as he collected some shotgun shells and put them into a knapsack, carrying it on his side. Getting into a typical shootout all across the park square itself, the artificially cremated walking area that helps sustain much of the oxygen inside of Rapture. They were virtually fending for their lives at this point, battling against the two Rumbler Big Daddies, when off in the distance, there came another one. It wasn't under the control of Fontaine, and Bucky took this as advantage. Using a hypnotizing plasmid, he used it on the Big Daddy in question, known as the Lancer. The Lancer would come tumbling over to their aid, carrying with it a mini Gatling gun. Seeing the other two Big Daddies, it immediately rushed into battle without hesitation, distracting the two as it came shooting and taking every shot that was fired right at it. "How the hell were you able to do that?" Howard asked. "Hypnotized plasmid. Works on the Big Daddies, but it's only temporary. We need to help that one fight against those two." "How long is it going to work?" "As long as I've got enough Eve, then maybe we can get some more on our side." "What, you're trying to build an army?" "We're gonna need one. Fontaine's got most of this place on lockdown, but even still, he won't do anything too reckless. Until he's able to get out of Rapture for good, he can't destroy it, not with himself inside. No matter how much he tries to act like he's in control, he's trapped just as much as the rest of us. So for now, we've got to play to that advantage, at least before he has a chance to get out of here." With that, the three would aid the new Big Daddy that had come to their side as they fought against the two Rumblers. Bucky would go for the one on the left, while the others would deal with the one on the right. As one of the cannons were about to be shot out of the arm once again, using the telekinesis, Bucky would send it right back down into the cannon's hole, causing it to detonate and blow up, blowing off the cannon arm of the said Big Daddy, leaving it virtually defenseless save for its one good arm, as the Big Daddy in question would attempt to grab some random piece of debris and use it as a weapon. Bucky would stun it with Electrobolt before dousing it with a blast of Incinerate, causing it to char and turn into a burnt black as it began to stumble. Grabbing to his side, he pulled out his pistol and began firing at its eyes, or whatever it used as eyes, blinding it just long enough before getting in close proximity, as he would use telekinesis at full strength, lifting the Big Daddy up in midair before slamming it into the other that was being battled by the other group. Once the two Big Daddies that they had fought and had been rammed into one another, as they slowly staggered to their feet, the four would surround them, firing off all of their bullets, every bit of power that they had, to kill the two of them once and for all. As they continued their fight, Fontaine, in the meantime, using the master key in question, was able to move all throughout Rapture freely with the bathyspheres. He had to get to the medical pavilion for one reason and one reason only. Good old Dr. Steinman. The doctor had been killed by Bucky when he first arrived here, and he was good enough to just be left to rot. But he was going to require the doctor's services one more time. He needed to change his face, to change his looks. That was one of another perks that came with Adam, being able to change one's own identity. And with the Master Key, he could use the Vita Chambers for anyone he wished. All he'd have to do was bring back the doctor, allow him to do some touch-ups to work his magic. All he had to do was change the face. As for the hair, he could take care and do without that all well and good. He'd probably get something new anyway. Something similar to Stark, but with his own flair, if you will. And when he was all said and done, he'd just kill the doctor again. As far as Fontaine was concerned, this was the ultimate score. The meal ticket straight out of Rapture and on to the good life. And it's funny, when he first came to Rapture, he came because he thought that this was an opportunity of a lifetime to have a whole city under the sea, all under his possession. It was all supposed to be so simple, so easy, and yet his adversaries made it so damn difficult. First, there was Ryan, always breathing down his neck, sending his damn constables down to his docks. He couldn't just leave well enough alone. Fontaine was prepared to let nature take its course, so to speak. All he had to do was become richer, more powerful, and then he could just take Rapture right from under Ryan's nose. But no, the self-proclaimed, self-made man had to get down and dirty, had to use cheap tricks. Even went as far as to make Fontaine Futuristics nationalized. He did that. Broke his own law. What a shame. But in the end, Fontaine couldn't fault him but for so much. After all, he was breaking the law. Not that he gave a damn, but still, he was. So, he had to do something else. He had to make a figure. Someone for the people to believe in. That Sophia Lamb, she was good at getting people to her side. Talking about the ancient Egyptians, the slaves that lived in the floorboards or whatever the hell she was talking about. But no, he had to add his own little twist to it. So, that's how Atlas was born. Fontaine died in a shootout, and Atlas came onto the scene. Ryan was a smart bastard, but he was never smart enough to figure out that Atlas and Fontaine were one and the same. He just thought he had enemies everywhere, and he wasn't wrong about that. After all, it got so bad that some in Ryan's own inner circle, they all tried to cross him at some point, in one way or another. And as a result, they were killed. But for Fontaine, he was the last one left standing. Rapture, the secret empire of the sea. A place hidden away from the likes of man who could not understand true ideals. Fontaine was the living embodiment of Rapture. He was the true heart and soul, the spirit of this city. Because he had the means to make it by any means necessary. There wasn't a line he wouldn't cross. There wasn't a low he wouldn't stoop to. If you wanted to get down and dirty, Fontaine would gladly drag you into the mud, and he would bury you in it. No, Fontaine was a lot of things, but the key among them all was survivor. He survived everything this world had to throw at him. He survived gangs, he survived government officials, he survived Rapture, Andrew Ryan. But now it was time to take things up a notch. Howard Stark, owner of Stark Industries, a man well known for being in bed with the likes of the US government. Sure, Fontaine didn't have all that sciencey stuff down packed, but he didn't need it. He could just hire people to scope over Stark's research and do what they will. Put them to work, let them make all the money, and he reap all the benefits. And if anyone ever got out of line, well, then maybe some people would just have to go missing. He'd done it before. After all, he wasn't even the real Frank Fontaine. But, like all of his problems, they'd soon be buried under the sea. For now, though, as he made his way through the medical pavilion, he walked through the corridors. There were a few straggler splicers, although they stopped at his command. The pheromones now taking into effect, they viewed him as the master. They stood in attention, not daring to cross him. That was a good thing, because good help was so hard to come by. He didn't want to have to kill anyone he didn't have to. At least not yet. He eventually found the lab, the furnace area, where he found the burnt body of Dr. Steinman. He grabbed the corpse by the collar, dragging it to a vita chamber, opening it up and slamming it inside, before using the master key to activate it once again. The chamber would begin to spark and crackle with energy, and the good doctor would be revived back to a regular state. As he opened his eyes, though, and he saw what was waiting for him on the other side, it filled even the mad scientist with some fear. Because what was staring back at him, it didn't even look like a man. It might have been, but what was behind those eyes was something otherworldly. Something filled with evil. The chamber opened, and before the doctor even had a chance to stammer out a few words, he was grabbed up once again. Dr. Steinman, Dr. Steinman, Dr. Steinman. As I live and breathe, and now so do you. You look like... Yeah, I know what I look like. You know who I am, you know the drill. I require your services one more time. You know that fancy millionaire boy up on the surface, Howard Stark? Yeah, I need you to make all of this look like all of that, down to the last detail. This is the last surgery you'll ever do, Doc. So you better make sure you do a good one. And if you try anything, you try to cross me in any way, well, I won't kill you. Not yet. But when I'm done with you, you'll have wished I killed you. Capiche? Yes, Mr. I mean, get to work. You all, you guard the main doors of the medical pavilion. Any bathysphere that comes up, you destroy it. You rip it to shreds, you tear apart anyone that's inside, and you bury them in the ocean. Understood? The security bots, I've made sure that they don't target you, but I even hardly know how half of this shit works. So, if you're not careful, you're gonna have bullets riddled all through your body. You'll be turned to Swiss cheese. Now, hop to it. You, get the doctor whatever he requires. You, stand clear of the door. No one gets inside. With that, the surgery would begin. In the meantime, as Dr. Tenenbaum was preparing to escort the 13 girls to the next bathysphere, having given the group enough time to get ahead, she believed they'd be able to rendezvous and finally make their escape. Thankfully enough, she had followed the request of that Peggy Carter, and she had managed to revive him, although she didn't understand, but in a way she did. As the chamber door would open, the man would walk out. The last thing he remembered was being on his knees, remembering that sound, the sound of the shot that took his life. Now, though, he had returned back to the world of the living. Although, why was he here? This wasn't how he expected things to be. It seems you are back in the world of the living. Welcome. Dr. Tenenbaum. How am I? There is a lot that has happened, and short time to explain. Pick up that weapon and prepare for a fight. I am going to need your help escorting us to the main medical pavilion. The medical pavilion? And why in Christ are we going there? It is time for liberation in Rapture, my friend. Our liberation. And Sophie, Elaine, where are... Safe. You fulfilled your duties as a husband and father. You kept them safe. I do not believe in God. I don't believe in the mystic. I like to believe that things happen because we will them to. But for you, whatever you believe, it is obvious that there is something greater than ourselves that has led us to this point. We do not deserve the second chances we have been given, but destiny has laid them before us. So I ask, what will you do now that you have a second chance at life? This concludes BioShock Secret Empire. What if the Winter Soldier was in BioShock? Part 8. As always, if you enjoyed today's video and everything else that we have to offer, then please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, and hit that bell for post notifications so you can stay up to date on everything that is PowerCore Productions and Podcastings that's to come out now and in the future. Stay tuned for tomorrow's video as we continue with BioShock Secret Empire. What if the Winter Soldier was in BioShock? Part 9. But anyway, that's going to do it for the end of today's video. I'm Javon Harrington with PowerCore Productions and Podcastings. Signing off, and I'll see you next time.